the film series here and kicked it off, and this is going to be more exciting. The film, Unacknowledged, has already hit #1 on iTunes for the trailer and in the top 10 for pre-orders. Our goal is to disclose this information to a few hundred million people, and that's going to happen. So that's what we're here for, and I want to welcome some folks who are here. You want to come up?
Sure.
Yeah? So you introduce yourself.
I'm Vincent Spano.
So Vincent is an actor, and we're very pleased to have you here. And
thank you.
How have you found out about what we're doing? And
well, I'm an actor and a director and a writer, and one of my mentors is a writer and director. Is David Marconi, who I believe is a friend of yours. David wrote Enemy of the State, and he just wrote Martin Campbell's new film, The Foreigner.
Right.
He's always kept his ear to the ground on truth, whether it has to do with politics, government, money, all that good stuff. And The Foreigner is a terrific new film that's going to come out later this year. And I'm sure you've seen Enemy of the State. So I am what I believe like-minded. I remember when I was a kid, I waited online at the Ziegfeld to see Close Encounters of the Third Kind on the day it opened.
Right.
And then I pretended I lost my glove so I could see it twice in a row.
I did the same thing.
Okay, so you know. So I think I've always had a strong interest and belief, that we're not alone in no way, shape, or form. So what would you ask me about that interest of mine?
Yeah, well, what are you wanting to discover from this film? I'm curious.
Truth.
Yeah, well, in an hour and 40 minutes, here's the thing about Unacknowledged. We distilled several thousand hours of top-secret military testimony, documents, and evidence into an hour and 40 minutes.
Well, that's quite a task.
And, so we have the filmmaker here, the director. It's just arrived, so that's what we tried to do. And then there's a book by the same name that has much more information than the movie. So we'll give you. So when you leave, we'll give you a package of that.
All right, that's awesome.
Let
me ask you this: how did you get access to that information?
I've been working this with I was asked by friends of Bill Clinton to brief his first CIA director in 1993. So I've been involved in that level. I'm an emergency doctor, medical doctor, who got involved with this, and it just slowly overtook my career.
That's awesome. I have to plug an ex-girlfriend of mine. Her name is Carol Ann Fernandez. She just wrote a book published on Amazon called Mission Possible, Finding Your True Calling, something like that. And she talks about how we have our careers and then we find our mission. It sounds like you found your mission.
It's our mission, yeah. Mission Impossible, actually.
But no, possible. You did it.
I'm just kidding. It is possible.
You manifested it. You created it. So it's awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm very excited to see what you've put together. I really am.
I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with
the
project.
Thank you. So, have you something over here? You want to go this way?
I will.
Yeah. Who's this? Where's Ron? All right, so you need to stay up here. Or somebody needs to stay up here. There you go. So, this is David Marconi. Those of you who have seen the movie Enemy of the State, that was his project, a brilliant writer. We're going to collaborate on some things, and first time I think I talked to you, I said, I thought I was the enemy of the state.
Opinions vary. There's this microphone for you, David.
And as for people who don't know David Marconi, I've had the pleasure of meeting him the last few days. Brilliant writer, and we're going to be counting on you to do a great screenplay for something coming up in the future.
I want to thank you for the work you've done. I believe in conspiracies.
I believe in theories. I believe back.
Conspiracies are like dogs. One day you wake up and you notice them and they're everywhere. And the UFOs and free technology is one of the greatest conspiracies out there. And the fact that you're able to find these people and get them to go on tape and do what you're doing to me is an inspiration, and I'm touched by our relationship and to be able to meet you, and if we can come up with a great project that would somehow elevate this in a kind of a Hollywood type film, reach a lot of people, it would be
it's about educating 7 billion people. Half the public know UFO and the government's hiding something. What they don't know is how they're doing it, why, and that's what this is about.
Well, I think it's
and the why is the hardest thing to answer. Yes, but I want to thank you, and
it's my pleasure. I think it's very, very important work that you're doing, and I'm very honored to be here tonight.
I appreciate it. So if you want to ask a question?
Is there a I've got my own mic. Is there an underlying sense among people in the entertainment industry that you've noticed that kind of reflects an awakening to this topic? Because for a long time it was considered to be, something that was ridiculed, and more people in high-profile positions are coming out and saying, yes, I believe this to be true, and yes, I believe that things like this are going on. Have you noticed yourself that there's more acceptance among your peers?
I'm talking from personal experience in that I've witnessed things 3 or 4 times that, when I was growing up, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, I used to build model airplanes. I knew what a jet airplane looked like. I knew what a prop airplane looked like. I knew what the Wright brothers airplane looked like because I built them all. And one day you're walking in from recess, and it's like you're like 8 years old, and you're with like 10 of your friends, and you look up and you see something, and it's not an airplane. And you're like, well, what's going on here? And it really affected me. And ever since then, as an individual, as a person, I became very curious about this entire subject matter, which eventually led me to Dr. Stephen Greer, because he is he's been compiling all of these people together and putting together a coherent message that people can somehow understand. But for me, it's been a very personal journey because of things that I have witnessed on a personal basis. And I know Clinton has seen, or Jimmy Carter has seen things. Many people have seen things. But obviously it's not in the interest of big oil and all these other people to come out with the information on free technology. Because who wants to hear about that? Because suddenly you have a multi-trillion-dollar industry that's going to be displaced. And that is, it's a disruptive technology.
The ultimate disruptive technology and information.
And to bring something like that in, it disrupts the entire world. And right. That's very scary for a lot of people. Ultimately, it'll be a better world, but it's not a world that won't come without growing pains and displacement and everything else.
You're what we call an experiencer. So there's people that believe, and there's people that have had something happen to them, whether it's an eyewitness event or an abduction event or anything along those lines where you actually went through something.
See, what you don't know about that is a lot by using that word. So here's the thing. When this movie, what you're going to find out is that about things that are in the category of the usual UFO ghetto, like you just mentioned, those have been done by the counterintelligence community for 60 years. And these are one of the biggest, most shocking things in this. So I always tell people who studied UFOs know the least about it because they don't understand how counterintelligence works. So part of this expose is to show people what's going on in the counterintelligence area that has brainwashed the public on the subject to make everyone docile and accept World War III that'll be interplanetary.
Right. Well, we don't have.
And so that's really, to me, that's the part of this that's the most important, because the only thing worse than keeping the secret is for it to be disclosed in a false way that leads to an interplanetary conflict. So I think that's one of the chief purposes of this film, is that I got a heads up about a year and a half ago that's getting fast-tracked, where they would false flag some events to stampede the planet into what Douglas MacArthur said in 1955 when he said World War III will be interplanetary. So I think this is the biggest problem we're going to be facing over the next few years.
Well, you have to keep fear of an outside threat.
Yeah, I mean, we need a new enemy.
If you want the herd to gather around the leader, you need fear of an outside threat.
Right.
And whether it's a false flag event that creates terrorism or whatever else you want, you have to keep the public in fear because that's how you keep them gathered around the leader.
Well, that's how you control them.
You know, and it's not just about UFOs. It's about, you know, I mean, the selling of wars is as old as the history of mankind.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's about control.
Yeah.
Yeah, the control of the populace.
It's the same. It's the same story told over and over and over again.
Well, thank you again.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
And
really.
look,
I can't wait to see
I'm so
the movie.
glad. And look, there's we have some wonderful
goodie
things
bag
for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You deserve it, man. You head this way. Thank you. I'll see you later.
Very nice to talk to you.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you.
So, Dr. Greer, can we talk a little bit about that false flag thing for just a moment?
Hello. I'm Dr. Greer, and you're?
I'm Gina in Toronto.
So.
It's gonna be kind of funny.
That's fun. So what is your background?
I'm a mixed martial artist. Used to do cage fighting for about 8 years, and then I moved over into action actress. Steven Soderbergh kind of discovered me for the movie Haywire in like 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
Haywire.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do.
Just move the camera.
I've been totally lying.
Were you in Fast and Furious or?
Yeah, I was in Fast and Furious also. 6.
Which one?
6. Yeah.
Well, they're on Fast and Furious 81 now.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's going into like they're all getting spin-offs.
Yeah.
And I just get killed off.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of action movies?
I like action movies that are based in actual events, which is the next thing we want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite action film?
Well, I don't know. I would say I really liked Argo.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Ben
Affleck's. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. I liked Aaron Brockovich because it's a story of a person, ordinary person like myself. I'm a country doctor from North Carolina originally, taking on the national security state.
Yeah.
And she was taking on PG&E, I believe it was. Very similar storylines. If you look at Aaron Brockovich, you see what happened with the corporate death threats and all this stuff. It's very similar to this subject.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that was based on a true story. So if it's based on a true story, I find it more interesting than fiction, personally.
So the director who did Aaron Brockovich is the one that broke my career, so
wonderful. Cool.
He did Haywire. So it's interesting that you brought that up. So you I don't really know anything about any of this. I kind of showed up because my buddy Jeff Bowler was like, hey, come to this thing. And I was like, okay. And so I snuck past this red carpet, and they're like, you have to go back up there and talk to them. And I'm like, oh God. So what should I know about this going into this?
This is an expose of a sort of a distillation of 25 years of my research with top secret military guys and CIA folks. I began briefing the director of the CIA in 1993 for Bill Clinton on this issue of UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence. And it's really to answer the question of what is the truth of the subject, how has it been kept secret, and the big one is why. Why is it secret? Who cares to keep it secret? And that's what this is going to answer.
So
in an hour and 40 minutes.
So you 100% believe in UFOs?
No, I don't believe in them because, it's like, do I believe in this microphone? So I'm a scientist, a medical doctor. Belief is in something not proven. This is proven. So what I think is, I believe in the potential of humanity to bring this information out in a way that gives us a new civilization. Because, see, these objects are not moving using fossil fuels. This is really an environmental and technology story. And the reason this is secret, it comes out, we don't need oil. And we don't need freeways.
That was the most fascinating answer I've ever heard to that question.
Yeah. And actually, this is exactly the question that was asked of me by the CIA director and the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Senate Intelligence Committee. Why is this secret? And when I would explain that this is a technology issue and it's about the future of the human race getting off the 1800s power system and electric grid, but the people who control that, and it's hundreds of trillions of dollars involved, they don't want that change to happen. So when the president tries to make a move in this direction, he's told not to. And no president since Eisenhower's had control over these covert programs. And the word unacknowledged comes from unacknowledged special access projects. What that means is it's a military speak for a black project that's so black it's being run in a criminal way outside this oversight of the president and the Congress. So that's what we're exposing.
My mind is How? I have a personal question. Maybe it's too personal. So, has your life been threatened by the government then?
Yes, but I'm not worried about that now.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not even the interviewer here, but I just have...
No, you have good questions. I love your questions.
They might be coming from an innocent place, but
no, it's beautiful.
Really know anything about it.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad that you're here.
Thank you very much.
And we have some of the book. There's a book, by the way, that is about 10 times more information than the movie. That's coming out today also. It's called Unacknowledged. So we'll get and one of these beautiful posters.
Maybe this is just going to completely blow my mind.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. If you were to watch this movie and then you started doing some of your own research and you began to realize the validity and the importance of this topic, because I consider it to be one of the two most important questions facing humanity. If you were to solidify around this, would it enable you or inspire you to be more active in talking to people about it, in trying to help groups that are trying to get the government to tell us more, and to just work more on wanting to get to the truth?
I think that...
Would it be more of a personal... Would it have more personal importance to you?
I think that's kind of like an interesting question, because no matter what, like, I can say, okay, I'm going to go have this fight, but I know damn well that, like, when you go and have an actual fight, it's a completely different story than actually just saying that you would have a fight, you know? And I think that anything that affects you personally, like, no matter what, you start looking at, like, you know, you start looking more into it, and I think that, like, for your life, like, it's pretty bold that you're out here, like, telling your story. Am I right?
Yeah, you know, in the 90s, I had 3 members of my team assassinated helping us, and a former CIA director, Bill Colby, was assassinated helping us. It's going to be in the film.
That's amazing.
And so it's very intimidating initially, and then you kind of learn to take it in stride.
Right.
And,
if you're in Russia, you
it's
get off right away, right? Like, if you, like...
Yeah, and that's what was happening to us, because we were too obscure. So by being not obscure, there's a certain level of protection.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, don't underestimate the fact that there are a lot of people in classified projects who want this information out.
Yeah.
But they don't have the final control at this point.
Right.
So it's moving in that direction, and disclosure. I founded the Disclosure Project 2001, May 9th, which is the 16 years ago from this May 9th when the film is finally available to the public. This premieres before the release on May 9th. That event was seen by several hundred million people around the world.
Wow.
And so we've been struggling to move this information out to the public for a very long time.
Because of fear.
Well, I think the reason it's been kept secret is that people who are in control don't want to lose control of the current macroeconomic system.
Right.
You know, the hundreds of trillions of dollars in the petrodollar, oil. You know, the whole global economy is really controlled by a handful of global elites.
And are they doing that because it would just be mass chaos if we knew the...
No, it's because they like having the power. They don't want the people to have it.
I think that more and more, to answer your question, the more I'm a truth seeker. I call myself a truth seeker. So that's where I'll leave that. And whatever you do with that, it's all a matter of, like, your personal conviction. So I'm happy to be here. I'm a newbie to this whole entire environment, but I'm actually, like, I always find myself showing up for reasons. So I'm glad to be here. And
thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. And my assistant has something for you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
So, Dr. Greer, let me ask you a question real quick.
Nice to meet you. Tell me about your background.
I'm the founder of Judicial Watch. Hi, nice to meet you. And Freedom Watch.
Oh, excellent.
And we're a public interest group that fights against government corruption and exposes.
I almost contacted you guys when the government tried to put me in prison for doing what I'm doing.
Really? Why did they do that?
That's a very long story. We don't have time for it. But
you
wouldn't believe the fascist tendencies of the national security state.
Well, I do believe that. I actually brought 2 lawsuits in the last 3 years.
Wow.
Against the NSA, CIA, and we enjoined them twice.
Good for you.
And that gave rise to the USA Freedom Act. And now we find out they're, of course, it's predicted they're violating it still. You know?
Oh, sure. Yep.
They even got into my phone in the last few weeks, so I'm
suing
suing them again.
He says a little higher.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful that you've done that. And I've known of your group for many years, admired it, and
Thank you.
We should exchange information. I may need you guys sometime.
We should. Let me give you my card.
Thank you. Yeah, and I have my card. Can give you a card also. This is so awesome. Well, a lot of people don't realize that this crosses all the political divides most people think about.
It does.
This secrecy, because, Eisenhower was a Republican who, coined the term beware the military-industrial complex.
Right.
He actually had been denied access to these projects by the end of his term, which is why he made that statement. Barry Goldwater, if you remember, you're probably...
Of course,
Senator Goldwater and I had long discussions about this, and when he was trying to find out about this, he was threatened. And, here was a very conservative Republican who had been on armed services and intelligence, ran for president.
It's not a political situation.
It's not a political issue.
No.
It's really, it's about authoritarianism and fascism, whether it's left or right, that has overtaken our democracy. Control. And our democracy is being run amok.
They don't want to admit there may be another force out there that challenges them, you see, ultimately.
Yeah, they don't want to admit that classified projects working on this since the 40s have figured out how to get us off oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, and public utilities. And that's the big issue.
Well, like I was saying, there are forces that are greater. David Marconi is a friend of mine. He invited me here today.
Oh, wonderful.
The great writer who wrote Enemy of the State.
Yes, sure. We just had him here.
Right, right. But there's a lot of things that we don't understand, and even the President of the United States is really not in control of what goes on.
No.
He's the puppet.
I don't know if you've seen the chart when deals with this, with the UFO and extraterrestrial issue. The President's at level 21. This issue goes up past compartment 40. So it's, and I have dealt with presidents since Bill Clinton personally, who have been denied access to this information.
Well, George W. Bush, I think, recently was on Jimmy Kimmel. Did you see that?
I did.
And he asked him about Roswell. He says, "Is it really true?" And he says, "I can't tell you. My kids asked me that, and I can't discuss it." But I'll tell you,
and who are they in control? They're controlling the President of the United States. So what happened to our democracy and Constitution? This is the question.
I'll tell you an interesting story. I represent Cliven Bundy, the rancher in Nevada.
Sure.
I'm a criminal defense.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm walking out of Pahrump prison about 2 months ago.
Right.
And it's high security.
Right.
And I say to one of the guards, I say, this reminds you of Alcatraz. You don't have San Francisco Bay, but you've got rattlesnakes. I mean, it's the middle of the desert. He says, rattlesnakes are not what we worried about. I said, what are you worried about? He says, we see UFOs here every night.
Yeah.
Overhead.
Right.
And, who knows what they are?
Yeah. A huge number of them are man-made. And that's what the biggest, if you look at the display downstairs, you'll see a whole display of things that the public call UFOs that are made by Lockheed Skunk Works, Boeing, Phantom Works, Northrop Grumman, et cetera, and so on. And what people don't understand is that those have been used in clandestine ways by humans since 1954. The date that's going to shock everyone is that gravity control and zero-point free energy was mastered October 1954. And
look at the TGV, the train in France or in Japan. It lifts off the track. It's anti-gravity. So why can't it be taken a step further?
And it has been.
Yeah.
For 60-some years.
Well, and David Marconi believes, our mutual friend, that there's an alternative space program, which kind of makes sense, because what have we really done since the early 60s? We haven't really progressed that much in terms of what the public knows.
And we're still using rockets from Wernher von Braun in 1940s, right?
Right. Are we to suggest that our cell phone has advanced like it has, but yet the space program has not?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
This is the point I make to people. On all those big advancements have been paid by the taxpayers of the United States, and where's our dividend? Where's our benefit?
Well, it's an interesting story. Years ago, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all the information the government has on UFOs. And it came back and it said, well, everything is on our website. I didn't pursue it because I was busy. I had other issues. Yeah. But I'm going to get back into that.
Yeah.
Good. I think we need to bring
to collaborate on this.
Let's do it.
Good.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming up.
And we'll be in touch.
Yeah, we will. Thank you. Thank you. So there are more.
Okay. Hi, nice to see you.
Oh.
Hi.
God bless you. Oh, you're my thoughts and prayers.
Thank you. Thank you. It'll happen. We'll get it done.
Yeah. Carmel McGuire, Jerry. Where's Jerry? They're awesome people who are on our team and near Santa Barbara. Ojai. Close enough. Oh, thanks. We're on the live stream here. So we just want to say, you want to say a couple words.
This has been going on for a long time, and it's finally happened. We are thrilled. We drove in from Ojai to see this great man, a personal friend, and one of the dearest, most knowledgeable people that I have ever met. Jerry?
I can't add to that. I agree with everything you said.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here.
First contact experience with
Yeah.
Amazing, unforgettable experience. And we're with him for the long haul.
Absolutely.
Have a fabulous evening tonight.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Hey.
Keep me in your prayers.
Hope to see you at the party after. You can make it if you go up to it.
It's in a little bit. So we're going to move on just a little bit more.
I don't know if you remember because how could you? But
Just a little bit this way. Thank you.
Oh, there's a hole here. There we go.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say...
Well, thank you. So tell us who you are and how you're up here.
And
so
Higginson, I've met you before, and I came from Florida.
All right. Thank you for coming.
And I have nothing to say, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. She just told me to go this way.
He just wanted him this way. So, yeah.
Who is this gentleman? We have Jimmy Church here with us.
How are you, man?
Nice to see you. So I would like to thank Jimmy for coming and for supporting the disclosure effort and our effort for a number of years. And what do you want to say a few words to all the folks watching?
I'm going to say this is amazing. How are you feeling right now?
Oh, great. I was just, trying to keep body and soul together. Been out here since Thursday and meeting with some of the most amazing people in L.A. and support is building around disclosure. And
do you think, let me ask you directly, do you think something is about to break? We feel the tension. We feel something dramatic. There's so many things coming out from NASA every week about new exoplanets and fast radio burst and now Enceladus and Europa. It's always a month-to-month announcement about the discovery of something. Do you think it's their way of getting us acclimated?
I think it's been going on for 60, 70 years, but it's picking up the pace. But my concern is that I wrote a paper back some years ago called When Disclosure Serves Secrecy. And so there are two kinds of disclosures that can happen. A disclosure that moves our civilization forward, or one that presents a threat from outer space that submerges our entire world into this sort of energy of the post-9/11 hysteria. And so my concern is the latter is what they're doing.
Right.
The latter is what's being ramped up. And this is being evidenced by the amount of xenophobic and terrifying information that's part of the counterintelligence disinformation being pushed out to the public. And one of the exciting things about this movie is that we have an Air Force counterintelligence officer going on the record about the government controlling the media on this.
You think they're out there right now?
And hoaxing things like abductions and what have you. So I think that what people have to understand is who benefits from the fear. The same devils who have been controlling the planet for decades, if not centuries, around war and conflict. So I think that what I feel is that we have to decide as a people, do we want a disclosure that benefits humanity and that is truthful, or are we going to run scared with a disclosure that's controlled by the national security state that would like to see endless war? And I think this is the choice of our generation.
What about this kind of support from Hollywood, Sony, Orchard, behind a film like this for the first time that I could think of, where it's been this dramatic and this forward, that certainly has to say an awful lot.
Yeah, and from even other quarters that I'm not permitted to talk about yet, but in a few months the world will know about. So this information in this film has the potential to reach more than 100 million people within the next 4 months. So the exciting thing about that is that people are realizing that it's time for the truth to come out, and also it should be the full truth, not a half truth. And the full truth is that a huge percentage of the information that's out there on the internet on this subject is counterintelligence disinformation designed to scare people. And as Werner von Braun, the man who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, said on his deathbed, that basically they want to be able to create a threat from outer space that is completely a hoax. And so our concern, and the reason I rushed to get this movie finished in 12 months, is I'm getting intelligence and information that is being accelerated. So it's kind of a race between the folks who want the truth out in a way that would benefit Earth and the human race, and people who want to pop a surprise on the planet that would sink us into something much worse than the aftermath of 9/11. And I think that's really what we're up against.
What does this say to you? This kind of response, downstairs it's a madhouse, right?
I haven't been there in a while.
It took me a while to get up here.
I'm sure.
Say that. Yeah. So, and what does that say to you? I mean, everybody is using the D word daily. Disclosure.
Yeah. Well, what it says to me, and we have so many great media groups, ranging from Huffington Post to Associated Press to Breitbart News, coming forward wanting to get this information. To me, it says that we've reached a critical sort of mass of people interested in the subject who knows that it's real and it's time to bring it out. And to me, that's very good news, very exciting news. At the same time, we have to be prepared for that being hijacked and taken over by people who have an agenda that would serve the purpose of the secrecy. The purpose of the secrecy to this date is to keep the technology secret and to hold that card back, to play the threat card from outer space at the right time. And then Werner Braun said that in the early to mid 70s and 40-some years ago.
Right.
So the question is, can we find people of goodwill who can understand the nuance of this issue? Obviously, the majority of Americans think UFOs are real and the government's hiding something. What this film and the book is actually 10 times more detailed than the movie. And by the way, all of you should ask your local booksellers for Unacknowledged the book. Because if we can hit the New York Times bestseller list, that will move disclosure forward by leaps and bounds.
Well, I'm going to you've got tons of people that want to jump in here.
Yes.
I will say this to everybody out there. Stephen will be on with us on Coast to Coast in about 2 weeks. He hasn't formally accepted, but he will now because we're streaming live to the world. So there you go. Stephen, congratulations.
Thank you.
All of us.
Thanks for coming and your help. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you tonight after the
Thank you.
The show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Oh, you want? Okay. Those are signed.
Thank you. You know what?
Oh, good. Great. I need it. I got kind of burned.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
I'm Dr. Sarkisian.
What's your name?
Arthur Sarkisian.
Nice to meet you.
Producer. I produced the Rush Hour movies.
Oh, Rush Hour. Yeah, that's what we were in today.
Right. And I've been working with David Marconi on a new one, and I'm very interested in your subject matter. I'm very, very interested in UFOs and new technologies, and I just love to be here, and I wanted to see your show.
Maybe you can help us with the next project.
Absolutely, why not? I would love to.
That would be wonderful. I appreciate you being here.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? It's good to see you. How are you?
Susan Manowich from New Energy Movement.
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you feeling this evening?
Good. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I first met you Friday, I think.
Yes. Well, actually, I met you before a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But it was a lovely dinner.
Thank you.
So one of the questions, I have two questions.
Okay.
All right. The first question is, I have talked to a number of people that have been positively impacted by your events that you have, the CE5 events.
Yeah, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind event. Yes. That's the next one that's coming out.
I look forward to seeing that one.
I just dropped a little hint.
in progress of happening. What can you tell me from all the different experiences that you've had with running these different groups and participating with them? What do you think are some of the biggest impacts that have happened with these people? Because I know people see ships and they see beings, but what has transpired with them?
You know, there's the phenomenon that people see when we go out and have a close encounter of the fifth kind, which is a human-initiated contact. And we have Dr. J. Allen Hynek's son here somewhere. I don't know if he's on the red carpet. It kind of ended there. Close encounter of the fifth kind is when humans initiate peaceful contact with these civilizations, bypassing the national security state. The big message is that when people realize that any person can do that, if they understand the science of consciousness, of the physics of interstellar travel, of the fact that interstellar civilizations have technologies that are way beyond our iPhones and Androids, that interface directly from consciousness and thought to electromagnetic fields. And that when we're out under the stars doing this together, and that becomes demonstrably true to 30 people who are seeing it all at once, a paradigm shift happens, a consciousness opens, where they realize that the world isn't what we've been told it is, that the world is a multi-dimensional universe, and that these civilizations are passing through other dimensions, getting here from point A to B, but that all of that is recapitulated or folded within every human being. And so the potentiation that humanity has to experience that and make that happen is folded in every single human being. And that is the ultimate disclosure, is every human understanding that and saying, the government can't control 7 billion people who awaken to the fact that we're children of Earth and we can make contact and there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
So I think it's very empowering. Very empowering. On a personal level, I would say people have experiences in a week expedition like that who have been involved in studying this issue that exceeds 20 years of their prior experience.
Right.
It's very intense.
Right. And it's also a jump in their understanding of how maybe what their function is on the planet and what they can do also.
And also the complexity of it, because when we'll have one of these events happen, we'll have an ET craft come in, and within seconds there are helicopters, jets flown in that are military trying to suppress that event from happening. Right. So it's a very dramatic thing for an average person to come out and see. It's not at all frightening, at least not to me. Of course, I'm an emergency doctor, so people come in with Tech 9s and 10s trying to blow your head off. So, I mean, but I think that for people who come and realize that human beings are actually equal to any civilization out there, but we haven't realized that potential.
Right.
And so it's about self-actualization, self-realization. And most people wouldn't think of that when they think of UFOs and ETs, but ultimately that is what happens to people inside.
Right. It's about their growth.
Yeah, their growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a huge growth.
One last question. I don't want to hold things up too much. So you and I are in a similar arena with working to get new energy technology out.
Yes.
What do you think that you've seen change in the last couple of years that you feel is encouraging and inspiring to try to get this out?
Well, I think the biggest is that there are more and more people realizing that this is all true and not mythological. And then once you ask the question, if the UFOs are real, how are they moving around? And they're not using rockets, and they're not using Jet A fuel. So it's opening up the question of why are we still using old fossil fuels and even nuclear power that's 100 and some to 70 years old when we've had these other technologies that are in classified unacknowledged special access projects. So for me, I think people are beginning to realize that our biggest problem is secrecy. And I want to point out to everyone listening at home, in the book, and I think it's in the film as well, that you'll see beginning May 9th, if you're not here personally, it's the date of the release of the film. The first director of the CIA said that the secrecy related to UFOs is a threat to the national security, not the UFOs. Eisenhower warned of the same thing. But this was explicitly in a letter in I believe it was 60 or 61 to Congress. And it was actually published in the New York Times, where the very first CIA director was very upset that the uncontrolled black projects dealing with this issue that were sitting on zero-point energy, anti-gravity, free energy, and that this is actually criminal, but it's threatening the national security and now world security. And so this is a very important point. And the reason I think more and more military and defense contractor people come forward is that they realize they've been part of a system that is in the process of destroying the planet.
Right, and they have grandchildren and children.
And they have children and grandchildren like I have 4 children, 8 grandchildren. Terrifying thought, huh? So, but thank you again. We have some other folks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
You got the time, right?
Yep.
How are you?
Hey, there's someone there I want to have come up. Come up.
Right?
Yes.
I've been crying ever since my son.
I know. Okay, so we have a very special guest here, Paula Harris, who's helped me since the early 90s, and J. Allen Hynek's son is here. J. Allen Hynek was head of Project Blue Book for the Air Force, and then started the Center for UFO Studies. He came out with the fact that these were most likely interplanetary vehicles. He understood the interdimensional aspect of it and many other things, and admitted that the Project Blue Book was sort of window dressing. So we're very honored to have both of you here because you interviewed his father.
Actually, I worked with his dad for 6 years. He's the one that got me. He's the one that got me involved in ufology.
Right.
If it wasn't for his father and the fact that I spoke Italian, I wouldn't be standing here.
So what do you remember from your dad?
Well, I grew up. For me, UFOs are normal.
Yep.
So I grew up in a traditional house in Chicago, but we'd have things like UFO ornaments on the Christmas tree.
So did we.
The paintings of UFOs in the garage, and we had people like Father Gill from New Zealand or from New Guinea, and from all over the world coming all the time to mention their UFO stories. So it was just natural for me.
What's the most interesting story your father shared with you that the public may not have read or heard about?
Well, I don't know. If my father didn't share it, I don't know if I should. But I'll tell you, my favorite story as a kid was with Father Gill. When he came over he had a famous sighting in Papua New Guinea.
Yep, I know that case.
UFO witnesses run the gamut from highly credible and corroborated to somewhat more sensationalistic, as I'm sure you know.
Sure.
And Father Gill was an Anglican priest in New Guinea who had an experience, and he came to Chicago for an ecumenical conference, not to discuss UFOs, but he came and my father invited him over, and he talked about how he had seen in the company of 500 New Guineans a craft about 500 feet in the air.
Right.
And a lot of commotion, and then he waved, and he saw a creature come out on the ship and wave back.
Right. A CE-5.
Yes. And at that point, he went back in, I think it was for, I forget which prayers of the day, but he went inside for prayers, Vespers. And he was roundly criticized for that, but the oath that he took wasn't that I will do Vespers every day unless I see a UFO. That was his routine. And so he's telling a story, and it wasn't the most sensationalistic story I've ever heard. There wasn't an abduction. There wasn't that kind of interaction. But he was so low-key and just answering the questions he was asked.
Right.
Very clearly possessed of all his faculties.
And matter of fact, yeah.
And matter of fact, and also very comfortable in his own skin.
Right.
And there were 500 other people that saw it. And I believe some radar corroborations from the other side of the country. So for me, it was one of the most compelling testimonies I'd ever heard.
Right. Yes.
And that was just dinner.
That's wonderful.
Monsignor Balducci. So
Yes, Monsignor Balducci, yes, absolutely, at the Vatican.
At the Vatican.
Paula Harris set up that interview and meeting, and one of the things that was interesting, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were off camera, Monsignor Balducci was a senior theologian to Pope John Paul, etc. We were on the balcony, and he says, I could not be giving you this interview unless Papa, meaning the Pope, wanted me to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a lot of support for disclosure in places that are quite surprising.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure
Thank you.
to work with you.
You're an angel. She's an angel. Without her, we wouldn't have gotten this far at all. Jan. So good to see you. I'm very pleased to have the International Director of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, here. And he has been an enormously great support person and friend and has done tremendous work. We've known each other for at least 20-some years.
20 years, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So what do you think? How are we doing?
It looks beautiful. I can't hope for a very fantastic premiere tonight. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'll tell you that Jan Harzan is one of the people that in this field that he's going to do what he says he's going to do, and I very much appreciate that. And he's enormously great man with tremendous integrity, and MUFON is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we're all in this together, so let's make it all
You
happen.
may not know that when I first had the idea to start the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and then the Disclosure Project in 1990. Now, I'm dating myself. This is 27 years ago.
Right.
I didn't know what to do or what to so I found out about this thing called MUFON and went to the 1990 MUFON International Symposium, which I believe was in Gulf Breeze or near there because of all the sightings in the Gulf Breeze, Florida area. And that was my very first event. Now, of course, nobody knew who I was, of course, but which was just as well. It was nicer then. I had more fun. But that was my very first event that I ever went to.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, back in the early 90s, when you started the whole Disclosure Project, it was called Project Starlight.
Correct.
And at the time we met, I was living on a street called Starlight Circle.
I remember. I was at your home.
Yeah. Anyway, congratulations and have a great
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Watching the film.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Great. Wonderful. All right. Who else we have out there?
It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you. I am very, very honored to have Dr. Bob Woods here. He is a Disclosure Project witness from the early days.
I'm one of your pages, that's right.
Yes, one of my patients. You're not one of my...
Pages.
Pages, yes. And he's actually in the film. And why don't you tell them what you did, what happened at McDonnell Douglas when you were with the Condon Committee, just briefly.
Okay. Yeah, years ago, my boss asked me, what should we tell the Air Force how to get to orbit and back 10 years from now? So I told him, why don't we tell them how the UFOs do it? So he said, go ahead and work on that. And so I read 50 books.
And your boss was Old Man McDonald, right?
He was ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, of McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah, that's right. So we wound up getting $500,000 to actually study that project in 1969. So
how UFOs work.
How they work, yeah.
Yep.
The question was, did we figure out how they worked before or after our competitor Lockheed?
After.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me give you the date.
Yeah.
October 1954, we mastered gravity control.
I believe that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a Naval Research Labs the senior scientist there for years who was in the vault and saw that documentation.
I think the Navy was way ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. NRL, the biggest defense lab in the United States. Of course, Thomas Edison started it, as you know, or you may not know. But, yes, and so 1954, October. So if you look at your roads, your freeways, your cars, your jets, your trains, your boats, all of that's been obsolete since before I was a twinkle in my father's eye. And I'm no spring chicken.
I'm really glad you're bringing that out.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor that you're here. Thank you so much for all of your help. I appreciate it. Okay, we've got a signed cap here. I'm not going to put it on, but there you go. Thank you. On, you want to here, take the mic. Hi.
Tommy Burr.
Nice to meet you.
Can we switch?
You want to switch? Do-si-do, don't trip.
Thank you.
Hi, so tell me about yourself and how you got to be here.
I'm a commercial real estate broker in North Carolina, actually, Raleigh. I know your old stomping grounds in the state.
Grew up in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Well, I started getting interested in this after watching you and several other people. Started doing the research, and I'm having a hard time not putting the pieces together as a logical, wanting to find out. It makes too much sense.
Sure. It's all very logical once you figure out what the secrecy's about.
Right.
Yep. And all of it makes sense at that point. So, yeah, you're part of a CE5 team in North Carolina, or?
No, but I'm thinking about it. I've always wanted to do something, and I saw you say it one time, which is everybody wants to know, but nobody wants to do anything.
Yes, that's the hard choice.
Right.
Everybody wants to know, nobody wants to do. So it's time for us to act, everyone.
Right.
Let's do it.
And we've been doing that for 50 years or whatever. So
70 years this year since Roswell, right?
I'm not getting any younger, and I want to know.
Yep.
So
I'm glad you're here to find out.
Well, it's going to be a great
Thank you so much.
Right.
I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. I didn't say anything.
Huh? Yeah, of course. Come, Jim. Oh, look, where's Paul? Is Paul with you? Oh, okay. So this is, everyone, this is Jim Martin. He's Vice President of the Orchard.
Yep.
And I want to express publicly my thanks to you.
Thank you, Dr.
There's thousands of people watching on the live stream.
Sure.
I can honestly say that this film absolutely would not have been completed to the quality it is, nor would we be working with the Orchard if it wasn't for Jim Martin.
Thank you, Dr.
So you have been indispensable. Thank you. So tell me about what your thoughts are about tonight.
Well, I'm very excited about the turnout. And excited for everyone to see the movie on the big screen.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the final product?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah?
Yep.
Good. Excellent showing tonight.
Yep. Thank you.
Looking forward to the feedback.
Yeah, well, we're over capacity here just about, so it's exciting. And we have a lot of media who are coming, and I think that there's some things that you and I know about that can't be talked about yet.
That's right.
Eventually this film's, I think it's eventually going to be seen by 100 million people.
Agreed.
I really do. Yep.
Yes.
Thanks to you guys.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, and to Paul as well.
Absolutely.
Paul, the head of the film division at the Orchard. Thank you.
That's right. Good.
Thanks so much.
Dr. Greer. We'll see you later.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, hey, we got to go. We're starting our program downstairs in 10 minutes, so I'm going to move off of here and head downstairs. Thank you guys for joining us. The contributions to make this happen were from $5 to $111,000. And it's really been touching to see people from all over the world wanting the truth to be known, for disclosure to happen, and for us to begin a new civilization on this planet. And there are a few people that I really want to thank who are specific individuals. And, of course, amongst those is the director of the film, Michael Mazzola, who was supposed to be down here with me but sort of didn't want to do it. Where's Michael? Stand up and at least take a bow. Where's Michael? Yeah, thank you, Michael. The wonderful thing about Michael is that he's happy to work and serve and create the best educational product that is possible to move disclosure forward. And he came to the Sirius premiere with Adam Curry, who is also here, Dr. John's protege. And we didn't meet then, that I recall, because there were too many people. There were 700 people at the after party. But he reached out when we were looking for someone to head up making this new documentary. And he has such a great grasp of the knowledge and the information and the ability to weave it together. And it was just amazing that over a 12-month period, we went from the concept of this film and starting the crowdfunding campaign to completing a full-length feature film and a book in 12 months. And it was a very, very heavy lift, as we say in the Gold's Gym, and it couldn't have been done without a lot of people working on it. Another person who worked hard on this for a year is Chris Christotelli, who is here. Where's Chris? The producer? Yeah, there he is. One of the producers on the film. And Stephen Peake of Aurora Media. Where's Stephen? There's Stephen. I'd say that Stephen is sort of like a co-director and collaborator that had jumped in on this film and did such an amazing job in creating the finished film that you will see tonight for the first time in public. And I have to say, Stephen was someone who we identified, I believe, in May or June of last year, and went around with his awesome Red Dragon cameras to film the new military witnesses, and then took over a lot of the post-production and has been working on it even up to today to get everything finalized for the May 9th release. So it's been an enormous effort. Thank you, Stephen. I want to also thank specifically, and I'm not going to name all of them, but there are a few of them here, the military and corporate government witnesses who have had the courage to come forward and speak the truth. When I accidentally began this project, in my misspent youth, I don't know if you can imagine being in your mid-30s being asked to brief a sitting director of the CIA on this, which is what happened to me. Being a doctor in North Carolina, working in an emergency department, taking care of things like shootings and stabbings and car wrecks and heart attacks and all that fun stuff. And at that time, I was asked to do it because we had successfully, in the spring of 1992, had a close encounter to fifth kind project where we set up protocols to contact interstellar civilizations, and 4 extraterrestrial vehicles showed up on the beach. And this got kicked up to Army intelligence and the agency, and the next thing I know, I'm in a hotel room being shot, with 30 questions. Like, what the hell are you doing? But the friendly people in the IC, the intelligence community, reached out and said, look, we want to help you. And there are people who should know about this issue who are being denied access. Then, at first, I didn't believe it. And I didn't know. I'm a doctor, never been in the government, never had a security clearance, although I've been in underground facilities where I needed one, but I got in anyway. That's another story for another day. And what ended up happening is that the people who were key to making disclosure happen were the folks on the inside who know how dangerous this secrecy is. And those are a larger number than you can imagine. Of the little over 100 military and CIA and corporate witnesses that I have on videotape, those are maybe a tenth of the ones that I have interviewed, because the other 90% are afraid of lethal force being used against them. But the ones who have stepped forward, I think, are heroes of our country and heroes of the world, and thank you, each and every one of you who have done so. I really also want to thank, this film is being distributed digitally by The Orchard. And a big shout out to Paul Davidson, who is the head of the film division for The Orchard, and in particular, Jim Martin. Jim Martin and Paul Davidson, if you're stand up and just say hi. Everyone needs to know you guys are the movers and shakers making this happen for the whole world. And I think that through the efforts that The Orchard has launched, there are millions and perhaps tens of millions and very possibly hundreds of millions of people who will know the truth. They are doing an amazing job. And also Julie Adansker, who is their marketing pro. Thank you very much for your great efforts. I want to say a little thing about Jim Martin. Jim Martin's a guy who's actually been involved with Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative and lives down here in Orange County. And if it wasn't for Jim's pure-heartedness his dedication, his perseverance, we would have never come together and reached an agreement with the Orchard or gotten a completed film or had Giancarlo Esposito, who many of you know from Breaking Bad, Gus, who did the narration. Such an essential part of this entire project has been Jim Martin. So from my deepest heartfelt appreciation, I want to say, all of you, a big thank you and a round of applause to Jim Martin and Paul Davidson. Now, I also want to thank Linda Martouche, who is a volunteer. Believe it or not, this whole production this weekend is being done by volunteers. So we have no paid staff. We still have no paid. I mean, the production was, but Linda Martouche and the 18 volunteers have made all of this happen, and so beautifully. So thank you, Linda, wherever you are, for your work. She's been working for months on this. Now, I think the most important person to thank is someone that nobody knows about, and that's my wife, Emily. God bless you. I can honestly say I wouldn't be a medical doctor without her. I wouldn't have 4 children without her, certainly. Or 8 grandchildren. Scary idea that I have 8 grandchildren. And then the entire disclosure project and all of the work we have done, the person behind the scenes who has done the chopping wood and carrying water, just the behind-the-scenes work, day in and day out for 27 years is Emily. So thank you, Emily. God bless you. I love you forever. Come on in. We're going to have, by the way, our 38th anniversary in August. And usually when people come on one of these expeditions with me for a week, about halfway through, I say, can you imagine being married to me for 37 years? And all the women go, no! It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. Anyway, it's like a really intense project. This project is a labor of love for all of us. I also want to thank Steve Alton, who is the co-author of the book Unacknowledged. Now, we're here for the movie premiere, but this is also the book premiere. All right? So here's how all of you concerned with disclosure can move it forward. Go home tonight. Tomorrow, call your bookstore, Barnes & Noble, whoever it is, and ask them to order this for you. Get a copy downstairs first. But ask them to order it for you. And because if enough people do that and it hits the New York Times bestseller list in the next month, that will open up so many media avenues into the expose that's in the book. And the book, by the way, has about 10 times as much data, information, cases as the movie. So I really recommend that folks, get it, but also, call people. And Steve Alton was the co-author and editor for it, a great guy who did a tremendous job at making it very readable. Because, all of my books I did on my own were like 600 pages, and I don't know how readable. But this is like 326 pages, reads really well, put together well, very professional. Because, I'm not a professional writer, he is. And so I think you're going to enjoy this book if you're aware of the others, and I recommend that you do that. But please help us by spreading the word. And those of you who are thousands of people listening right now on live stream, please go tomorrow and ask your bookstores to order this for you, and that will really have a huge effect. Now, I want to just say a few words. First, before I forget, please turn off your cell phones. Everybody? All right? At least mute them. Thanks. Don't have to be in airplane mode, but no ringers, please. I think that most folks don't understand how deep the secrecy goes on this issue. And the unacknowledged name for this movie comes from the first word of unacknowledged special access projects. Now, I had never heard of a USAP until the early 90s when one of my military advisors, a white hat from the deep national security state, naval intelligence, said, oh, yes, this is managed through unacknowledged special access projects. I said, what the hell is that? And he took me through the how of compartmentalized intelligence.
and projects that are so secret that if someone is your commanding general and is not part of that unacknowledged project, you are not to tell them that it exists at all. Now, this is, of course, illegal. It's a breach of the chain of command, and it's a breach that goes all the way up to whoever the President of the United States is, etc. What this means is that beginning in the 1950s, a silent and unacknowledged coup d'etat happened in the United States and other Western countries to keep this secret. Why? Because in October 1954, we mastered gravity control, anti-gravity technologies, and free energy. Since 1954, therefore, we have not needed oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, utilities, surface streets, rockets, jet engines, etc. It's a multi-$100 trillion issue. And the secrecy, as the first CIA director, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, stated in a letter to Congress in the early 1960s, is the secrecy is a threat to the national security. Most people think, oh, well, if you look at Star Wars or half the UFO conferences or the Internet, the aliens are a threat to the national security. No. The secrecy is a threat to the national security. And this, in the penmanship and letter and signed by the head of the CIA, the first head of the CIA. That's in this film and in the book. In 1955, October, I was about 4 months old. I was born in June of 1955. General Douglas MacArthur said that basically World War III will be interplanetary. Now, this is an uncontested comment. So since the early and mid-50s, there has been a cabal, a covert group, that has kept this secret for a few key reasons. And the why of the secrecy is the thing that is most disturbing, but most promising. And part of it is the inertia of secrecy, because this is a bigger scandal than 1,000 Watergates, by far. And certainly 1,000 times more scandalous than the Monica Lewinsky episode that we heard about for years and years. It's also the fact that the technologies, once they knew what they had, and this is over 60 years ago, they knew that the centralized elites, the global elites, which are, in my opinion, fascist by nature, did not want the public to know this. And they started a disinformation and counterintelligence campaign to ridicule the subject and keep it secret. Therefore, the world we have today is in a state of environmental and geopolitical meltdown, completely unnecessary. And the only way it's going to be fixed is through we, the people. It will not be fixed by the president, by himself. And therefore, this is a call to action, this movie. It's not made for those of you who already know something about UFOs, actually. It's made for the other 7 billion people who are our brothers and sisters on this planet, who suspect there may be something going on, but they do not know why it's secret and how it's been kept secret. Because if you were to ask 100 people on the street, maybe there'd be one, and I doubt it, who would know about what an unacknowledged special access project is, and that those projects run in a subterranean way, literally and metaphorically, so that the leaders that we elect and appoint can't control them. The other thing to remember is that, having been involved with the level of presidential briefings since 1993, a president may be read into or briefed on the subject, but it doesn't mean he has access control. Don't confuse knowing about it and controlling it. Because here's what happens. They find out about it, they want to move forward with getting the information out, and they're told, no, sir. It doesn't matter, it's the commander-in-chief. This is a serious problem because it makes a mockery of our democracy. The other problem is the fact that the fourth estate, the media, has been corrupted on this issue. And for the first time, we have an Air Force counterintelligence officer who is responsible for disinformation admitting in this book and in this film that bags of cash have been carried to senior people in the media, locally and nationally, to secure their cooperation with secrecy. We have a CIA document that states it, and we have a constitutional attorney who saw documentation that way back during the Pentagon Papers era, he saw documentation that there were 42 people on the payroll of the CIA in senior positions of the major media in the United States to control the media. This is not a conspiracy theory, but anyone who's concerned about freedom, democracy, and the future of our planet should be quite concerned by this. But I don't want to leave people with all that. That's part of the story. The bigger part of the story is that we have a choice to make, and it's the choice of a millennium. We can choose to go into the future with the status quo prevailing, or wait for the government to do disclosure, which will be a false disclosure and will be designed to scare the hell out of the public. This Air Force intelligence officer admits that he knew personally of the military staging abductions for their psychological warfare value. This goes very deep, and we are all vulnerable to it. Look what happened after 9/11, where we stampeded into this disaster known as the Iraq War, and now we have ISIS. We have to be smarter than this, but it's going to take all of us working together, and we desperately need your help and support. Because on the one hand, you have a future, it's like the Hopi prophecy, where the line terminates and our civilization is in peril and existential risk. On the other line is that we go up and we become interstellar ourselves. We have to make that choice. There's no other generations left to make it. We're out of time. Because the Earth is not going to wait another 100 or 70 years, like it's been 70 years since Roswell. So we have to make this choice, and we can and we must. Because when this is disclosed properly, we are going to have a world that in a generation, there will be no poverty. There will be no pollution of any type. Water, air, land. There will be prosperity that's astounding. The work week will go from what it is now, where many of us work 40, 60 hours a week, barely to keep alive, down to around 10 to 20 hours at the most, globally. This will happen in one generation. So it's the biggest change in the history of the world, and it has to happen. And why not? Because with 0.3 energy and these technologies coming out, we can have a world of our dreams. And this is not a utopia. This is doable, absolutely, today. It could have been done a year before I was born. So to our children and our grandchildren and our children's 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 children, we owe them this good future. And to that end, I want to announce, and it's mentioned in this film, that we want to start a New Earth Energy Incubator. You know, Google has an incubator for ideas and technologies. We need a people's new energy incubator where we have adequate funding. So anyone who can help us with that, see me after. Come to the after party or see me tomorrow before I go back East Coast. Because what we have to do in a very short amount of time is put together the best minds in the world who understand the physics of zero-point energy. Put it into a laboratory setting that's like GitHub. Anyone heard of GitHub? Where it's sort of an open consortium. No intellectual property, no secrets, nothing like they're doing at Apple with iPhones or Elon Musk is doing with SpaceX. It's all open source, 100%. And the laboratories are streamed online. So that the instant a physicist or an engineer hits that sweet spot in the electromagnetic field and pulls more energy out of the fabric of space and begins to run something with free energy, that data is known simultaneously all over the world. You know why? Then you can't keep it secret anymore. So, to those people who know inventors working on this, doing it secretively, don't do it. You're a dead man walking. Trust me. Believe me. You're not going to succeed. The only path out is to do it openly, without secrecy, and give it to the entire planet quickly. Later, people will come up with inventions and gadgets like iPhones that they can monetize. But the basic science has to come out. So this movie, we hope, does well enough financially to be able to put together the beginnings of that research effort. But we need people to come forward who understand that our civilization needs a serious, it's like the Marshall Fund for World War II, for Europe after the end of World War II. We need to create a fund where these technologies are developed and brought out. We have to be smart about it. We have to do it in a way where there's no secrecy, where the public owns it, and it's open source, without intellectual property restrictions and without patenting. And most people in the venture capital world don't want to do it because they always want to monetize it right away. I would say that's the second step. The first step, it's like creating the internet. DARPA did it. But DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, isn't going to do this. You know who can do it? All of you. I know some of the people in this room. There's enough resources in this room tonight to put that new energy incubator together and get it up and running